President.
The senator from Alaska.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request that proceedings under the quorum call be dispensed with.
Under the previous order, the Senate will be, without objection, under the previous order, the Senate will be in a period of morning business until 4:30 p.m. with senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise today to speak about what people all across the country are talking about, and that's the high price of energy, what people are paying at the pump. I just returned from a week in Alaska. It's fair to say that in a state like ours that is as rich as we are with energy wealth, we're being killed by energy right now when it comes to prices. And so I wanted to comment on some of the statements that the President made over the weekend and in Friday when he spoke about energy to the country. And I have to tell you, I was pleased to hear the President say that he is joining us in an all-of-the-above approach to energy. I think that's good news. It's certainly something that I have been saying ever since I arrived here in the Senate. It is about domestic production, it is about efficiencies and conservation, and it's about renewables. So that's good. That's good. We heard the President say that we need to be doing more with oil and gas. You're not going to find any disagreement with me. Wind and solar, nuclear, biofuels, efficiencies, this is all good. But the problem that we're seeing, Mr. President, is the words coming from President Obama are not matching the actions when it comes to what we can be doing with our own domestic production in this country. And I'll speak specifically to oil and gas. The actions coming out of the administration, whether through this budget or through some of the other proposals, pushing for higher taxes, higher royalties on the industry. When we think about what goes on with the oil and gas leases in the Gulf, we have certainly seen the impacts slow down there. Up in Alaska, we have been pushing aggressively for 4 years now to get the OCS leases advanced to exploration with Shell. Not only 4 years in the process, but billions of dollars into a process. We're getting closer, but we are not there yet. With the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska, an area that has been designated by the Congress to explore for production activity. Took almost 2 years to get a bridge across to CD5, an area where we have an opportunity to continue our exploration, but 2 years to get a simple permit for a bridge. We all know that ANWR has been locked up for decades now. Incredibly wealthy potential there. Look at the decision on the Keystone XL pipeline coming out of this administration. When it comes to other areas that are supposedly in all the above, nuclear, as much as we might have hoped that this was enjoying a renaissance, we've seen the decision on the shutdown of Yucca Mountain from this administration, the issues as they relate to access to uranium in certain parts of the country. The rhetoric is not necessarily matching what we're seeing coming out of the administration. And this is what is so disturbing to a person like me who comes from an area where we have so much to give, so much to offer. Now, the President, in his words, said there are no quick fixes to this problem. And I agree. I absolutely agree. And that's why, instead of focusing on what could be perceived a quick fix, like releasing oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, we need to be focusing on the long-term solutions. I keep going back to 1995 when the House and the Senate passed ANWR. It was vetoed by the President shortly thereafter. Prices at the pump back then were $1.07 at the pump. The average price today is $3.65. Think about where we would be, Mr. President, if that action had not been vetoed. If the Alaska pipeline, which is now less than half filled, were at full capacity, with oil coming out of ANWR. Mr. President, a colleague of ours from New York just yesterday sent a letter to Secretary Clinton asking her to pressure Saudi Arabia to pump more oil. And in In his letter to the Secretary, he says, I urge the State Department to work with the government of Saudi Arabia to increase its oil production as they are currently producing well under their capacity. Well, our pipeline, Mr. President, is certainly well under capacity at 600,000 barrels a day. When we were pushing it through at full tilt, we were over 2 million barrels a day. That's exactly what the senator from New York has asked Saudi Arabia to step up to do. We could be doing it from Alaska. We could be doing it from this country with our people gaining access to our resource, and we're not doing that. Now, the President says that the Republican plan is just to drill, and he says we hear this every year. Well, why do we hear this every year? Because it is part of the solution. It's not the whole solution, but it is part of the solution, in addition to conservation, efficiency, renewables, and other areas of our domestic production. But drilling, Mr. President, is part of the solution. It shouldn't just be part of the rhetoric here. The President says, and I would agree, the American people are not stupid on this. They know that we're not just going to be able to snap our fingers and have oil coming out of ANWR or having oil coming out of the OCS in the Chukchi or the Beaufort. They know that it takes a while. They know that in some cases it might take decades to come. So why, Mr. President, would we not start now? If we had started in 1995, think about where we would have been. He says there are no short-term silver bullets. Once again, I agree. But there is a long silver bullet in Alaska, and that's our Trans-Alaska Pipeline that has been producing oil or moving oil for 30 years now for this country. That silver bullet could be filled up, and it would be helping this country, just as we're asking for help from Saudi Arabia. Now, the statement that I think most upset me this weekend was a statement that the President made when he said some politicians see this being higher oil prices as a political opportunity. And he repeated a quote that Republicans are licking their chops and stated, only in politics do people root for bad news. Well, Mr. President, the people of my state are not rooting for bad news when it comes to higher energy prices. And I will tell you, I'm a little offended by the President's statement. I would invite him to come to Alaska, spend a week with me, go to where I was last Saturday, up in Fairbanks, where people are paying $4.29 for their home heating fuel. My sister pays over $1,000 a month for home heating fuel to fill her tanks. She lives within 20 minutes of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. You can see it. You can drive by it, this line that is half full. And it's not, again, it's not because we're running out of resources. It's because we've been locked out of ANWR. We've been delayed on NPRA. OCS, we're still waiting on. There's certainly plenty of leases out there, but it's getting the permits out of this administration that has been holding us back from doing more to help the people of Alaska and to help the people of this country. Last month, I was out in Bethel in southwest Alaska. There was a native elder who came to a little gathering that we had. He's from Eek, Alaska, and he was telling me that he pays $7.46 for home heating fuel in the village of Eek. That's how you stay warm. When I was there in January, the average temperature for that month was about 20 degrees below zero. He says that he has to buy his fuel 10 gallons at a time because that's all that he can afford. And then when he doesn't have any more money, he goes out looking for firewood for he and his wife. This gentleman, as I said, is an elder, probably 70 years old, but this is how he is living. This high energy prices for him are not an opportunity. Go up to Nome. All eyes of the nation were on Nome several weeks back when the Coast Guard cutter was escorting the Russian fuel tanker, the Renda, to get to Nome to provide fuel for the community of Nome and the surrounding villages because the winter ice had come in and the winter barge had not been able to make it in with the fuel. When I was in Nome that that afternoon, the prices for gas at the pump were $5.43. Price for diesel was $5.99. But it was projected if the RENDA didn't get through, if they weren't able to fill up their tanks, they would see the prices go up to over $9 a gallon. Think of what that does to just your ability to live. Thankfully, the Coast Guard and the fine men and women were able to see that community and the villages were taken care of. I was in Yakutat on Wednesday, a small community that is not accessible by road, as most of our communities aren't. But there in Yakutat, they're paying 54 cents a kilowatt hour for their energy. Most of their power is diesel-generated power. 54 cents. That is for the businesses, the homes actually get a subsidy from the state of Alaska of 30 cents a kilowatt hour. But the small grocery store that we went to visit paid $10,000 for their energy prices in January alone. $10,000 a month for a small little grocery store. They're paying $5.19 a gallon right now, but it's going up with the next fuel barge that comes in. Alaskans in villages that rely on diesel for their power can pay between 40 and 45% of their income for their energy costs. Compare that to the rest of the country, where you're looking at somewhere between 3 and 6% of your income going towards energy. We're paying almost 50% in some of our villages. So, Mr. President, I don't view high oil prices as a political opportunity, and neither do my constituents. What we view as an opportunity is the resource that our state holds, but resource that we continue to be denied access to that opportunity. We just learned just late last week the USGS has come back with an estimate that the shale oil in Alaska will come close to 2 billion barrels of oil. ANWR's mean estimate is about 10.6 billion barrels of oil. OCS, we anticipate over 26 billion barrels of oil. Mr. President, we have the resources. We have the ability to access the resources and do so in an environmentally safe way. This needs to be part of all of the above solution, in addition to everything that we do with renewables, in addition to our efficiencies and our conservation. But we must be doing more domestically. Alaska holds the opportunity. But again, I would agree with the President. There is no short-term fix for this. But if we don't get started today, there is not going to be a tomorrow for communities like Yakutat and Eek and Bethel and Fairbanks. We've got to get started today, Mr. President. I thank you, and I yield the floor.
Senator from Arizona.
Let me commend my colleague from Alaska who's seeing this battle of the high price of gasoline firsthand in a state that could contribute greatly to the country's solution to the problem if the President and the administration would but let it. I was led on a trip by her father several years ago to the northern part of Alaska, where there are huge untapped reserves that could literally, if they had been allowed to be sent to the lower 48 at that time, could have significantly ameliorated the problem that we have today. So I appreciate her comments on that, and I know we'll be talking more about it. Mr. President, President Obama has ignited a national debate about the meaning of fairness and American values. In his campaign narrative, fairness means greater redistribution of income by the federal government. And expanding government control over the economy represents what he calls a renewal of American values. He argues that income inequality is the defining issue of our time, his words, and that it prevents many Americans from enjoying their right to pursue happiness. Well, while the President cloaks his rhetoric in the language of liberty and often misconstrues quotations from Presidents Lincoln and Reagan in the process, his interpretations of key American concepts and values are shallow, materialistic, and distortive of the true American dream. We don't need more government interventionist and redistributionist policies which reduce freedom in order to achieve greater measures of fairness and to pursue happiness. Having the government arbitrarily decide how much money should be taken from person A and given to person B is not fair in any sense of the word, nor does it make Americans happier. Indeed, even though America has become a much wealthier country during the last few decades and average income is higher, studies show that happiness levels have remained unchanged. In 1992, for example, 30% of Americans described themselves as happy. In 2004, 31% of Americans described themselves that way. That's because, contrary to what President Obama suggests, the key determinant of lasting happiness and satisfaction is not income. Rather, it is what American Enterprise Institute President Arthur Brooks calls earned success. People are happiest when they have earned their income, whatever the level. When the government tries to take all of the trouble out of life by taking care of our every need, it makes earned success that much harder to achieve. In his 2010 book, The Battle, Brooks describes the connection between earned success and happiness, and I quote, "Earned success gives people a sense of meaning about their lives, and meaning also is key to human flourishing. It reassures us that what we do in life is of significance and value for ourselves and those around us. To truly flourish, we need to know that the ways in which we occupy our waking hours are not based on mere pursuit of pleasure or money or any other superficial goal. We need to know that our endeavors have a deeper purpose." End of quote. Earned success is attained not simply through one's vocation, but also through raising children, donating time to charitable or religious causes, and cultivating strong relationships with family and friends. That's why successful parents and more religious people tend to be very happy. The earned success that comes from doing a job also explains why self-made millionaires and billionaires continue to work hard after they've earned their fortunes. These people are driven by the satisfaction that comes from creating, innovating, and solving problems. In many cases, they are making products or providing services that improves our quality of life. They are not content merely to rest on their laurels and enjoy their wealth. They want to continue experiencing the pride and satisfaction that comes from earned success. The importance of earned success also explains why people who win the lottery usually wind up depressed when they discover that the excitement of being rich and buying things wears off fast. The same is true of recipients of other sources of unearned income. Studies show that welfare programs do not make people happier. We need them to help some people to subsist, but they don't yield true happiness or satisfaction because the money is not earned. So if earned success is the path to happiness, public policies should be geared toward promoting opportunity and freedom for everyone. No economic system does more to promote earned success and freedom than free market capitalism. As social scientist Charles Murray writes in his new book, Coming Apart, quote, "All the good things in life require freedom in the only way that freedom is meaningful. Freedom to act in all arenas of life, coupled with responsibility for the consequences for those actions," end quote. In a true free market system, everyone is guaranteed equal rights and opportunities under the law. All individuals and institutions play by the same rules, and the government acts primarily as a neutral umpire, not a redistributor of income or a venture capitalist. Property rights are upheld, contracts are enforced, and hard work is rewarded. And as Brooks points out, free enterprise is the only economic system that addresses the root causes of poverty by enlarging the economic pie rather than allowing government officials and bureaucrats to decide how to slice the existing one. The President's concept of fairness is different from what most believe. I recently read an anecdote that helps illustrate the fundamental disagreement about the difference between fair and earned. Two siblings are fighting about who gets the last cookie. Brother says that he should get it because his sister already has two, and that's not fair. Sister responds that she helped make the cookies, so she earned it. The brother believes it's fair to equalize rewards regardless of effort. The sister believes in meritocratic fairness, that forced equality is unfair. Those of us who believe in the ultimate fairness of the free market subscribe to the sister's view of meritocratic fairness. She earned it. Free market capitalism is the most fair system in the world and the most moral. It is premised on voluntary transactions which make both sides happy by meeting their needs. Unfortunately, the past few years have shown us what unfair economic policies look like. When the government picks winners and losers in the marketplace, it's being unfair. When it rewards certain companies or industries for ideological reasons while effectively punishing and demonizing others, it's being unfair. That's called crony capitalism. When it shapes a corporate bailout to favor organized labor over secured debt holders, as the Obama administration did in the Chrysler bailout, it's being unfair. When it plays venture capitalists and gives a taxpayer-funded $545 million loan guarantee to a doomed company like Solandra, it's being unfair. When it makes the tax code even more complex and even more tilted in favor of special interests, it's being unfair. And when it adopts financial regulations that institutionalize too big to fail, putting taxpayers on the hook, it's being unfair. I could go on, but you get the point. Does anyone really think America's economic system is fairer today than it was in January 2009? Is it fair that after the first 3 years of the Obama administration, the poor are poorer, the poverty rate is rising, the middle class is losing income, and 5.5 million fewer Americans have jobs today than in 2007? Is it fair that the 3 counties with the highest median family incomes happen to be located in the Washington, D.C. area? And finally, is it fair that the wealthiest 1% of Americans are constantly being attacked by the president, even though they now pay nearly 40% of all federal income taxes? And the richest 10% pay 2/3 of all federal taxes. Well, these are some of the questions that Stephen Moore recently posed in the Wall Street Journal. If the president wants to continue claiming that his policies are fostering economic fairness and are ignoring the virtues of the free enterprise system, then let the debate begin. Mr. President, I notice the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
And the Senate just in a quorum call here, back from a week-long break, working on the nomination of a judge to the Eastern District of New York a little bit later. There's going to be a vote on that nomination at 5:30 Eastern Time. And later this week in the Senate, we expect to hear about the Surface Transportation Bill. The House did not pass its 5-year version of the bill, but the Senate's working on its own 2-year version. And a little bit later tonight, a live event to tell you about on our companion network, C-SPAN 3. We'll hear from Republican presidential candidate Rick Santorum. He'll be speaking in Michigan at a school in Kalamazoo. And you can watch his live remarks tonight at 7:30 Eastern. And again, that's going to be on C-SPAN 3.
Mr. President.
The senator from Pennsylvania.
Mr. President, I ask that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, thank you very much. I rise today on this afternoon to honor William H. Gray III, as I have every year since my election to the United States Senate, starting back in January of 2007. I've come to the floor at this time of the year in commemoration of Black History Month. This year we're privileged to honor a man whose outstanding accomplishments are of vital importance to African Americans, but as well to all of America. For his entire life, Bill Gray has been a minister and a shepherd for his congregation, his constituents, historically black colleges and universities, and to all Americans in need of a stronger voice. I've known Bill Gray for a quarter of a century, and I know his life's work is a testament to a single principle, one that has infused all of his work at the Bright Hope Baptist Church in Philadelphia, as a member and leader in Congress, and with the United Negro College Fund. Bill believes in the principle of a, quote, whole ministry, unquote, that the church must tend to all the needs of its entire congregation. Bill grew up learning that the ministry was not just something that you did on Sunday morning, but rather the action you took in the streets on issues ranging from housing to economic justice to excellence in education. Bill has called his position as pastor of the Bright Hope Baptist Church the most important job he's ever had, one that cultivated the skills and priorities that have shaped his life's work today. And today I'm proud to share some of the achievements that have resulted from Bill Gray's dedication to a whole ministry. Bill grew up in a family of educators and ministers who taught him the value of both professions to empower others. He was born in the state of Louisiana to parents who were both educators. His father was president of two historically black colleges, Florida Normal and Industrial College, and Florida Agricultural and Mechanical School. His mother was both a high school teacher and served as dean of Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. When Bill was 8 years old, his grandfather passed away, and the family moved from Louisiana back to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. There in Philadelphia, Bill's father assumed his own father's position as pastor of the Bright Hope Baptist Church in North Philadelphia, and Bill cemented his roots in that community. He has spoken of the powerful impact of these years, moving from a region where Jim Crow laws reigned to a large northern city where his family had strong ties to other clergy and community leaders. Because of de facto segregation in housing at the time, North Philadelphia was a neighborhood with African Americans from all walks of life, including many role models for the young Bill Gray. Hobson Reynolds across the street was the leader of the Elks. Cecil B. Moore, a future member of the City Council and head of the Black NAACP of Philadelphia, lived 2 doors down from Bill's family at the time. Other neighbors include the renowned architect Frederick Messiah and Sadie Alexander, the first woman of any race to obtain a Ph.D. in economics in the United States of America. And of course, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. at that time was a frequent visitor to Bill Gray's home, as were Dr. King's parents, who were close family friends of Bill Gray's family. Both the elder and younger King, as well as other ministers, influenced Bill's understanding of the, quote, whole ministry and encouraged his education and career as a minister. Bill graduated from Simon Gratz High School and went on to Franklin and Marshall College. When Bill considered leaving Franklin and Marshall before graduation to join civil rights protests in the South, Dr. King encouraged him to stay in school and to hone the skills necessary to continue that struggle later in life. This idea of education as a key to African American advancement would guide Bill for the rest of his life. Bill graduated from Franklin and Marshall, and in 1966 he obtained a master's degree in divinity at Drew Theological Seminary, and in 1970 a master's degree in theology from Princeton Theological Seminary. While at Drew, Bill's talents were recognized by the prestigious Union Baptist Church in Montclair, New Jersey, and he was later chosen to be a pastor there as well. The King family presided over the installation ceremony. In his first parish, Bill Gray worked to serve the whole community, advocating aggressively for the needs of his congregation and the community's most vulnerable members. As the city of Montclair undertook urban renewal, he helped to form a development corporation to ensure that relocation resulted in safe, decent housing for his parishioners and their neighbors. This issue of housing hit Bill Gray personally when he tried to rent an apartment while studying at Princeton and was told the unit was unavailable. He sensed immediately that it was because of his race, and he found a friend who was white who volunteered to go to the apartment, look at the apartment, at which point the landlord said, in fact, it was open. Bill filed a lawsuit and for the first time sought damages for the psychological impact of discrimination. While the monetary award was small, his victory in the suit set precedent that those who discriminate based on race can be held liable for monetary damages. In 1971, Bill married Andrea Dash, with whom he has raised 3 sons, William IV, Justin, and Andrew. In 1972, Bill's father died unexpectedly and tragically, and the congregation at Bright Hope Baptist Church called on Bill to return home as the new pastor. Bill was reluctant to come back as the preacher's son, but 2 church elections finally convinced him to return, and he became the 3rd generation of his family to serve as pastor of Bright Hope. Under his leadership, the congregation quickly grew to over 4,000 souls. Bill also taught as a professor at Jersey City State College from 1968 to 69, St. Peter's College in Jersey City from 1970 to 74, Montclair State College from 70 to 72, and Rutgers University in 1971. He also continued his important advocacy on fair access to housing, and he co-founded the Philadelphia Mortgage Plan to help low-income individuals obtain homes. This dedication to helping his community and concern about their welfare led him back to the political world. In 1976, Bill ran an underdog campaign that challenged Congressman Robert N.C. Nix, a longtime congressional incumbent. Despite a close defeat in '76, Bill launched another campaign in 1978 and successfully earned nomination and election to Congress. The U.S. House of Representatives provided another pulpit from which Bill could pursue his whole ministry, and he did not squander the opportunity. He said, and I quote, if you can pastor a black Baptist church, maneuvering in Congress is easy. It's nothing compared to the choir, the usher board, the deacon board. You run a volunteer organization and you run it on persuasion, unquote. Despite his lack of previous formal political experience after winning the 1978 primary election, Bill started working in Congress to persuade other members of Congress from his party to support him in committee elections. Through dogged determination, thoughtful strategy, and clear explanation of his goals, Bill earned himself the freshman seat on the Policy and Steering Committee, which sets committee assignments for the party and influences policy. This established him as a rising star and a friend to many other incoming members of Congress, whom he helped land desirable committee slots. Bill obtained seats on the following committees: the District of Columbia Committee, the Budget Committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, and later a seat on the Appropriations Committee, the Joint Committee on Deficit Reduction, and the House Administration Committee. Leaders of the Congressional Black Caucus elected Bill Gray as its secretary, and in his second term, he served as the caucus's vice chairman. In Congress, he acquired a reputation as a thoughtful, honest, and effective leader in a diverse party, often building surprising alliances as he maintained his commitment to budgets that provided for the neediest Americans. Bill rose quickly to the ranks of leadership during his 12 years in Congress. In 1985, he assumed the chairmanship of the Budget Committee, just 6 years after the time he was elected. And just a few years later, 1988, he was elected to chair his party's House caucus, and then in 1989, he became the House Majority Whip, the third-ranking leadership position in the United States House of Representatives. While serving in Congress, Bill remained an active minister, tightly connected with his district in Philadelphia through his actions and the issues for which he fought. I just happened to be a constituent of Bill's in 1982 and 83 when I was serving in the Jesuit Volunteer Corps in North Philadelphia. And I know that at that time, he returned to Bright Hope Baptist Church twice a month to preach, and in Congress supported the programs upon which his constituents and his congregation relied. In a time of concern about fiscal discipline, Bill believed that compassionate spending was also critical and said that, quote, a balanced budget is good for the country, the poor, and the affluent alike. He said, I seek a budget that doesn't sacrifice programs for the poor and minorities, one that is fair and equitable, unquote. He produced budgets in line with his priorities, challenging opponents to produce spending cuts that did not hit the most vulnerable. On the Foreign Affairs Committee, Bill championed aid for Africa and sponsored a bill to provide aid to African villages, as well as appropriations to ensure minority-owned business participation in African aid programs. Bill took a strong and early stand against the Ethiopian government and its role in making a famine worse. He was also a prominent critic of the South African apartheid regime. In 1991, Bill Gray made a bold transition to minister in a new way on a topic of paramount importance to him, his family, and others. And of course, that topic was higher education. He said at the time, and I'm quoting, that Woodrow Wilson used to say, quote, my constituency is the next generation, unquote. And then Bill goes on to say, and you know, that's why I left Congress, because my constituency really is the next generation, unquote. He accepted the position as president and CEO of the United Negro College Fund, the so-called UNCF, a philanthropic organization that helps more than 60,000, let me say that again, 60,000 minority students each year to obtain a higher education. The United Negro College Fund not only manages 400 scholarship and internship programs, which benefit 10,000 students, but also provides operating funds for 38 historically black colleges and universities. Tuition at these colleges averages 30% less than tuition at similar universities. Bill Gray has said that he wanted to support historically black colleges and universities during a period when black students were choosing to attend a wider range of colleges. During Bill's 12 years as president and CEO of the United Negro College Fund, his success in supporting these institutions was unprecedented, and that's an understatement. Bill sought innovative ways to attract new investment and increase existing funding. By the time he left the United Negro College Fund 12 years later, Bill and his team had raised more than $1.54 billion. To put this in context, UNCF had raised a total of $3.3 billion in its 67-year history. He found new ways to solicit donations, increase the amount of in-kind contributions, and solicited from previously untapped foundations and individuals. In 1999, Bill Gray secured a $1 billion grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to advance minority students' access to higher education in the science, math, engineering, and education fields. This grant created the Gates Millennium Scholarship Program and marked the largest philanthropic donation in the history of higher education in the United States of America. Bill's success at the United Negro College Fund put higher education within reach and ensured brighter futures for thousands of students across America. We know, and those who know him know, that Bill Gray has never rested, and he's never satisfied with just one job at a time. While leading the United Negro College Fund, he was asked by President Clinton in 1994 to lead the efforts to restore democracy in Haiti. His work there earned him the Medal of Honor from the President of Haiti. After leaving the fund in the year 2004, Bill started Gray Global Strategies Incorporated and has served as a director on multiple corporate boards, including Dell, J.P. Morgan Chase, and Pfizer. He has also served as vice chairman for the Pew Commission on Children in Foster Care and has served on the United States Holocaust Memorial Council. He is currently chairman of Gray Global Strategies, a worldwide business consulting and government affairs strategies firm. Bill Gray has said that he's always, quote, been taught by my folk, parents, grandparents, that service is a sort of rent you pay for the space you occupy. And so what I've tried to do is direct my life toward service based on faith and commitment and social justice, unquote. Well said by a great leader, Bill Gray. In the Senate today, we express our gratitude for the excellent work of Reverend Bill Gray, Congressman Bill Gray, and you could add a few other titles as well. We express that gratitude for his, quote, whole ministry, a commitment that has touched literally millions of men, women, and children across the world. His vision and achievements have reached far beyond the walls of his church and the Capitol where we stand today. We honor him on behalf of the people of the Bright Hope Baptist Church, the United States Congress, historically black colleges and universities, and many, many more people around the world. We commend Bill Gray today. I want to congratulate him